Hello, ladies and gentlemen, veterans, dedicated VA employees, and everybody watching. As always, thank you for coming back to the channel. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for hitting like on the videos. And thank you for everything you do. Again, my name is Attorney Matthew Lang. I'm a VA accredited attorney, and we're here to talk about VA disability. Our topic today is going to be quite mathematical. It's known as VA math. But what is VA math? Well, veterans, when you get that decision in the mail for your disability compensation, you receive evaluations for each disability for which you've been granted. Those evaluations are calculated together to determine what your combined evaluation or your combined rating, as it's known in the law, to determine how much you're paid every month for your disabilities. So we're going to look at how that's calculated underneath the 38 CFR 4.25, that combined ratings portion, or also known again as combined evaluation. I'm going to go through and show you how to use the 4.25 reference and the table that is within it to calculate that combined rating, or even how to double check that combined rating. Now, this is just an overview, and there are other pieces that fall into it that we won't touch today, but do know there is a bilateral factor piece as well. It's actually in 4.26, which comes into play, which helps boost that overall evaluation in the end. But with that, the last part that I'm going to do, I will admit, will probably be fairly dry for most, but it's the actual by hand of how to calculate the combined rating or combined evaluation as I know it. Now, math can be done in multiple different ways, and as long as we get to the right answer, that's the important part. So it is more than possible that you have seen different ways of doing this by hand or heard of other ways of doing it, done it yourself in a different manner. But I want to at least provide you with one method out there if you haven't seen it done by hand, so you have a tool you can use yourself in the event you don't have this table in 4.25 available to you. Okay, so let's get started now with the 38 CFR 4.25 and understand what it says. So the idea that we have to take here is we may have learned in elementary school 1 plus 1 is 2 and 2 plus 2 is 4 and 3 plus 3 is 6 and so on. Well, VA math doesn't quite work that way. The 4.25 explains that we're looking for the results from a consideration of the efficiency of the individual that's affected by the first most disabling condition. And then the idea that if this person has a 60% disability, then it's considered that there's 40% efficiency left. And if we add in another 30% disability, that the overall efficiency is only 28%. Now, I'm going to admit, when this was first taught to me, this was very confusing, and I imagine that anybody who reads this paragraph is like, well, how the heck did you do that? And how are we getting to that efficiency level? But veterans, I want to let you know that we may not be doing 1 plus 1, but we're going to take what's left of you after each disability, essentially, to determine what your overall percentage becomes. And there can only be 100% of you in the end. So we can never get above 100% line. The reference goes into explaining how the table works. So as we look at the table, what we're going to find is columns and rows, like we would in an Excel spreadsheet or any other spreadsheet format. Across the top, we have in gray the numbers 10, 20, 30, all the way through 90. And down the left side, we have numbers starting with 19 and 20 and going in order all the way up to 94. So the idea is we're going to use these two, well, the one column and the one row, to find the number that they meet up to in that mess of numbers in the middle. And then we're just going to keep doing that until we run out of numbers. To do this, we have to start with the highest disability first, as the CFR instructs us, and then the next highest, and then the next highest. And then once we come to a point where we run out of disabilities to calculate or marry up in the column and the row, we round up or down. Now, that should sound familiar from an elementary school level because we're actually going to follow the rule of rounding up if we're 5 or above, or rounding down if we're below 5. So let's see how this works. Looking at the table, I'm going to utilize that 60 and that 30 that was talked about in the first paragraph. So we're going to find the 60. I prefer down the left side. In this case, you could actually find it across the top first, and then the 30 down the left side if you would like. But I like to get in the habit of starting with the left side because as we add more conditions, the left side just becomes more useful and logical to start with. And I'm hoping that you'll see why as we go through bigger examples. So let's start with the 60 down the side on that left side there. We have our 60. Now we move it over to where the 30 is and we make a meet. So, well, just like the beginning paragraph had told us, we would find the number 72. So now we have 72. We don't have any more disabilities at this point to calculate, so we do our round. We round down as we're below 5. Therefore, the total combined evaluation, or the combined evaluation or combined rating in this case, would be 70% for a 60 and a 30. Now, as you may have figured out or already know, that if you do the traditional 1 plus 1, the 60 and 30 equal 90. So BA math doesn't work that way. 70% is what that comes out to. Now there's another example that is inside this reference that I want to use. It has 3 criteria, or 3 evaluations. And I'm hoping that this one actually kind of demonstrates how working along the left side works the same. Now, we can go back and we can do the 60 and 30 in the opposite direction, where we find the 60 across the top and 30 on the side. You're going to find that it's the same 72 that it meets that. But let's say we have a 60, a 40, and a 20. So let's start with the 60 again. Find it down the side. Find our 40 across the top. Again, they've got to be in order, so 60 is first, 40 is second. We find the number meets at 76. Now we don't round yet because we still have an evaluation of 20%. So this is why I go down the side, because now we have to find 76, and we're not going to find it across the top because it doesn't exist. But we will find it down the left side. So we go to the 76 on the left side, and then we follow it over where it meets with the 20% in this case. And what do we find? We find the number 81. Now we only had 3 evaluations to work with. There's no more, so now we round. And again, in this case, we're below the 5, so we round down to 80. So if you veterans have a 60, a 40, and a 20, you're 80%. You're not 120%. That's how the chart works, this table works in 38 CFR 4.25. You can do this with a numerous amount of evaluations. If you have more than 3, you just keep going instead of rounding that number from 81. You then find 81, you find the next lower evaluation. And again, you find that number and you keep plugging away at it. It's when you run out of evaluations that you stop and round, and that's where your combined rating or your combined evaluation lands. Now again, keep in mind there is a bilateral factor piece if you have, say, for example, a right knee disability and a left knee disability that are both evaluated. That could come into play, that will likely change, or I should say could change, that combined evaluation, because it'll give it a little bit of a boost if it meets the criteria within the 4.26. But just as an overall summary, that's how the combined ratings are found. That's how BA math works, based upon the table that's in 38 CFR 4.25. Okay, now to the second part. That is probably the more boring part and drier part of this VA math calculation. That is, unless you're excited about math like I am. So I'm going to utilize the same two examples that we found in the 4.25 and that we did with the table and show you how I know to do this by hand. Now, granted, math has more than one way of getting to the same answer. So if anybody out there has any other way or method that they've used that may be easier than even what I'm showing, and I'm pretty sure there is, I think I've seen a couple actually, feel free to throw it in the comments and share with everybody so that we all can learn from it together. So let's start with the first example, that 60 and 30%. So we're going to start with the number 100. And why are we going to start with the number 100, veterans? Because you are 100% efficient without any disabilities. Just 100% of you, there can't be any more. So we start with number 100. We start with the highest evaluation out of the two, which is the 60. We're going to minus the 60 from the 100. And in doing so, we go back to that elementary school math and we find 60 minus 100 is 40. But I don't stop there because I have another evaluation. So you take the 40 now, and I like to kind of push off the side if I'm writing this down on a piece of paper, just to keep everything flowing smoothly. And I'm going to minus the 30%, that next evaluation, from the 40. Because we're now working on the new efficiency level of you veterans. It's no longer 100%. So by moving the 40 over, we're going to figure out what all that is. We're going to minus again the 30% from the 40. So now, the easiest way I can describe to find a percentage of a number, especially when we're working with the tens, is to take your decimal and move it over one space to the left. So 10% of 40 is 4. And if we do that 3 times, 4 plus 4 plus 4, or 4 times 3, we reach the number 12. So when we say we're taking 30% from 40, we're taking 12 from that 40. So 40 minus 12 to determine what our next number is. When we do this, we hit the number 28. So we don't have any more evaluations in this example. So 28 is the end of it all. So we come back to 100% efficiency. And we take the 28 away from that 100 to find a 72. And guess what? That again is the number that we found when we moved from the 60 to the 30 inside the table, 72. Without any more evaluations, we now have to round. And we round down to 70 as we did before, and we have a total of 70%. And what happens when we add that third evaluation in there? Well, the math gets a little bit longer. But it's all the same process. We start with the highest evaluation. In this case, if we're going to use 60, 40, and 20, we're going to take 60 away from 100 again. And as we already discussed, that's 40. Now when we come over, we bring the next percentage to take away from 40, which is 40%. So we figure out what 40% of 40 is. And in doing the same thing and moving the decimal over and going 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, or 4 times 4, we got 16. So our calculation at this point now is 40 minus 16, which gives us the number 24. Well, we slide that in place, and now we take 20% as our last evaluation away from 24. To do so, I just move the decimal again, and I get 2.4. And since we're only doing 20%, I only need 2.4 plus 2.4, or again 2.4 times 2. This is 4.8. I usually keep the decimal in place at this point, and now I take the 24 and I minus the 4.8. And I come up with 19.2, and now I round down to 19 because we're below the 5. Now you can probably do the rounding at a different point, earlier or later. Just kind of where I picked to do it with this example. But now that we're out of evaluations, we take the 19 from 100 and we find 81, which again was that number we landed on in the end of looking at all 3 evaluations on the table. And we round again. We're below 5, we round down to 80. So we have 80% at this point for a total rating or a total evaluation, or combined evaluation, combined rating. So there's a long form of doing it, just the way I understand it. Is it perfect? Probably not. But I wanted to give you an idea of what was kind of occurring in the background. So when you really look at that table and you look at the math that's occurring, you would see that when, for example, the 60 and the 40 are lined up, you're at the number 76 in the table. And you'll find that, remember, when I took the 40% from the 40, I had the number of 24. So if I minus that for 24 from 100 at this point, I have 76. So that's how the table has come upon that number, because it'll always turn out to be that answer. And that's how it works. So I thank everybody for sticking with me to the whole video if you did, and if you didn't, totally fine. My only goal is to hope that you get as much out of this as you can. Again, VA math it's a little weird, can be complicated to understand. Fortunately today we have multiple calculators out there on the websites. The VA systems calculate things for them automatically, and this doesn't have to be done by hand, or most of the time done through the chart that's in 4.25. Keeping in mind that the calculators are not always perfect, including occasionally some programming that may get messed up in websites where they have these calculators, or sometimes in the VA system. Sometimes it just happens. So it's still good to know how to calculate using at least the chart to confirm that the evaluation came out correctly. Once again, everybody, please like, subscribe, share my videos with everybody. If you think they may be interested in talking VA disability, I'd greatly appreciate it. Again, just trying to build a platform for everybody to learn something from. Feel free to make comments in here on these videos so we can discuss questions and help share some additional information. And veterans, as always, I am found at www.veteranlang.com. If you would like to discuss representation for your VA disability claim, I have a button on the website. You can access my calendar and we can have a phone call. We can have a chat. And hopefully soon here, if you're in the Arizona area, around Surprise, Phoenix, in the valley here, we'll be able to meet in person with a new office space that is coming to the area. All right. Thank you again, everybody.